everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to my video tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to make a six-sided pinwheel card. Before we get started though on those instructions, I want to invite you to join us on our Facebook groups. We have two of those. We have the Bello's Design Lounge. That's where we showcase all of our Lavinia products and creations. We also have the Bello's Design a la carte page. That's where we showcase all of the other products that Patty currently has in her shop. We are on other social media platforms such as Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. There, all you need to do is search the hashtag Bello's Designs, and you'll see some more of our creations on those platforms. Hey, how about coming over to YouTube also? Make sure you click the subscribe button and you hit that little bell. That way you'll be notified when we have new videos posted. So let's take a look at the six-sided pinwheel card. I have two of them here as an example for you. And literally they represent a pinwheel that's you can spin around like this. Okay, and then there was the second one that I created. Same thing, six sides. When you look down on them, you can see it's a hexagon shape in the center. And what I especially like about these pinwheel cards is that they do fold flat so that you can put them in an A2 size envelope to mail. Now, the one thing I want to caution you on is keep in mind the thickness of the card itself, because that's going to add to postage. Same thing if you would add any 3D embellishments to this card. That is definitely going to add to the weight of the card. All right, I'm going to set those aside, and we are going to take a look at the supplies that are going to be needed. So for my card base, I am going to be using a plum-colored piece of card that weighs approximately 65 pounds. Again, I want to keep in mind the weight and the thickness of the card that I'm developing. That's why I'm going with a lower weight of card. I am using today some papers from the Craft Consortium, and this particular set is called Bloom and Wild. These are beautiful craft papers. They are two-sided. As you can see, you get a printed side and somewhat of a solid side. Yes. And again, really some pretty designs and colors in this particular package. I really do enjoy using these papers. And this is the 6x6 side. You can also get this exact package in a 12x12 size. But for my purposes, I really like using this size. So from that, I will be choosing 3 different patterns. Now, we're going to take a look at what needs to be cut out. Now, don't worry about running to grab a pencil to write this all down. I plan on taking a solid picture of this so that you have the measurements. So that hexagon base, let me bring that back in here. That hexagon here, this is a separate piece. That base piece is going to measure 5 inches by 4 1/4 inches. And here I have it measured out for you. And you're going to need a scoreboard and a scoring tool. You will be placing score marks at the 3/4 inch, 1 1/2 inch, 2 1/4 inch, 3 inch, 3 3/4 inch, and the 4 1/2 inch mark. You will be adhering some double-sided tape to the thinnest section of all those scored areas. This is going to be done in my solid colored card. And I'm going to suggest that when you do this for the first time, that you use a solid colored base to begin with, especially on your first one, so that you don't get confused. But you know what? Go ahead and try a pattern paper the next time around. Now, Again, for the ease of making it for the first time, I'm going to suggest that the rest of the card matches the color that you used for the hexagon. So you will need to cut 6 panels that measure 4 1/4 inch by 2 3/4 inch. You will also need to cut from patterned paper 6 panels that measure 4 inches by 2 1/8. And again from the pattern paper, or you can use a solid color if you wanted, you will need 6 panels 4 inches by 1 inch. Now again, for the ease of this, I tried to keep it pretty simple and not mix up too many patterns with solids as to confuse you. But once you get the hang of making these, you'll be able to do all kinds of combinations. Okay, the next thing that you're going to need will be some red line tape. And I'm going to suggest that you use red line tape to build your hexagon first. You want something that you can depend on. And if you've ever used this tape before, you know it is extremely dependable. You will also need some liquid adhesive to apply all the panels. Any liquid adhesive will work. Now you're going to need a scoring tool of some kind, and you will need a bone folder to make those scores. You will need some inks, and the inks that I'm going to be using today are VersaFine Clair Twilight and VersaFine Clair Pinecone. Now granted, the paper you're using will determine the color of inks that you use. I will also be using a Distress Oxide in Faded Jeans. I am going to be using my Misty stamping tool, a blending brush. I am going to be using a colored pencil, and it doesn't matter what kind you use, for some grounding. And these are the stamps that I'm going to be using today. All of my stamps are from the Cardio line. Today I'll be using this sentiment that says, walking with a friend in the dark is better than walking alone in the light, and that's from Helen Keller. And this particular stamp set is called Torn Paper Whole. I will be using these 3 pieces of flowers. This is from the Cardio set called Wildflower Woods. The nest, the branch, and the birds come from the set called New Beginnings. This sentiment, if friends were flowers, I'd pick you, come from the set called Fern Wreath. The large hare and the mouse come from the Field Day set. I am going to be using just the stars from the Magical Christmas set. And from the Thorny Wreath set, I will be using this bird along with that branch. Okay, let's get started. Now, this card looks intimidating. At least it was to me initially. Now, I've done a lot of the work already ahead of time so that I don't bore you. Let's start by first making the hexagon. So here, as you can see, I have already scored my paper and I've already adhered the red line tape. Now my red line tape is extremely thin. That's why I have 2 pieces. If you're using a thicker one, all you need to do is one on the edge for the adhesion. Okay, what I'm going to do is use my bone folder, and I'm going to fold each of those score lines, creasing them with my bone folder. This just makes for a much nicer crease. And yes, I apologize, I have ink under my fingernails. All right, all of these are nicely scored. Even the last one, you want to score that, the one that has the tape. And at the same time, I'm running my score tool, my bone folder, over that red line tape. You want to make sure that's really pressed down firmly to the paper. If you've ever worked with this before, you know once it's down and there's no moving it. You will destroy that piece of paper if you try to remove it. So what we're going to do is fold over the first panel that we scored onto the top of that shortest panel. Now I'm going to remove the backing of this tape. Naturally, it's not going to pop off easily because of me doing this on video. Let me get that going here. Okay, let's try this end and see if it'll be a little more cooperative. There we go. All right. So once we get this removed, I'm going to show you a little tip and trick that I like to do. Yes, this is super adhesive. But what I do is I come in with my glue and I'm going to run a thin line of my liquid adhesive over that tape. And what that's going to allow me to have is just a little bit of playtime to adhere this. If I don't run this little line of glue and I go to adhere my pieces together, it's one and done. There's no way I can go back and try to redo it if I don't get it lined up well. So by putting the glue on top of that tape, it gives me a little bit of playtime if I need to make any adjustments. So I'm going to just line up the edge with that first crease and press it in place. And there I have my hexagon. Okay, that's simple. And believe me, that's not going anywhere. That red line tape is there forever. Now, the next step that we have to do is bring in those panels that we cut. These are the ones that measure 4 1/4 inch by 2 3/8 inch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the left edge of my panel and I'm going to adhere it to each crease on this hexagon. So bringing in my glue, and again, you really don't want to use that tape here because you want a little bit of play time. If you don't get it aligned, you want to be able to move this to get alignment because it's very important that that edge, that left edge, aligns with that crease. Make sure it's even on the crease, the top, and the bottom. So there is your first piece, your first panel. Now we'll continue and do the same thing for each panel. We are going to put it on each scored area. Now keep in mind, after you've done one of these, pattern paper is really a lot of fun to do in this area. It just really creates a lot of interest. Once that first one is on, it's pretty easy to just go along and quickly apply, each panel. All right. And again, you can always fold this down flat and put more pressure on if you would like, because it's going to pop right back up. All right, just a few more panels. All right. 2 more to go. So this will be a total of 6 panels, hence the name, the 6-sided pinwheel. All right. And one last one to squeeze in there. All right. Now, as you can see, each one of those is adhered to that hexagon. You can play with the shape. Don't worry, you're going to be moving this around a little bit. And remember, it's going to fold flat for you to be able to mail it. Okay, so that's where we are. Now comes the fun part. This is the part where we get to decorate each of those panels. Now, I chose to use 3 different patterns of the floral paper. And what I like to do, now granted, you don't have to do this part, but it's something I like to do. You can just place each of these pieces onto a panel, but I want to add a little interest to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in my Distress Oxide in Faded Jeans, and I am going to just add a little interest to each panel by blending some of the ink around the edge. This is going to create an illusion of light in the center of this panel. It will also draw your eye to the center of the panel. And in the center of each panel is where we will use the stamps. All right, you see how that creates a lighted, it looks like it's lit, the area. There's like a light source there. Now I do that to this and this smaller panel. Now with a panel when it's this small, if you don't happen to have a smaller brush to use, just stay close to the edge the best you can, going around circular motion, definitely not being too concerned if this is even or not. I kind of want it to be a little bit different each panel that I do and in each area. Okay, that should be good. Now let me clean off my work surface quickly here so I don't contaminate anymore. All right, I'm going to bring in my Misty. Now, you have to plan these out. You have to think about how you want these to appear when they're finished. So naturally, you don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. Your first panel, you might want to use a solid piece of paper. That way you could handwrite, or if you didn't have a sentiment particularly, or maybe you just want to leave it blank for whatever reason. These are just some ideas that I'm going to give you. So the first one I'm going to do is I am using the sentiment from the torn paper hole, and I'm going to place this in the center. I'm going to use my magnet. I'm also going to use my grid here to match up and make sure that my words are going to be level. I don't want it to be crooked. This is a neat little tool to have if you want to do that. I just don't trust myself as far as eyeballing it anymore. Let's see. I think I want to go up here. Bear with me. Okay, that'll be good. I'm going to use the Nocturne ink on this sentiment. And again, this is what I'm calling my front page. You're going to design this the way you want to. All right, pressing this. Remember, when you're pressing sentiments onto your paper, don't push too hard. They're somewhat fragile, and you can actually press the ink out and get some fat letters. And it just doesn't look very nice when that happens. All right, so there's my sentiment. And with this piece, you can do whatever you want. If you would like to add a cute little stamp, you can add stickers. I'm going to leave mine plain. Let me remove that. Now, once you have your panels all done, I'm telling you to do all 6 of them at one time. Get all the blending done, get all your stamping done. If you're doing any decorating on the small panel, get that all done first. Lay them out in the order that you want the card to be presented, and then go ahead and adhere. And to do so, all you need to do is use your liquid adhesive on the back of your panel, and you're going to center this in this space. All right, center it. Remember, using liquid adhesive gives you some play time so you can move it. And then you do the same with the 1-inch panel. You just center it in that area. Gotta kind of do 2 hands here to get it in there. Okay, so there's your first panel done. Now you'll move on to the next panel. Again, gluing each side, and you rotate through. I'm going to not bore you with all of that, and I'll be back in a second to show you how I completed each panel. All right, let's take a look at the finished card. After I left you a second ago, I decided that I did not want to leave this 1-inch strip plain. So I fussy cut a flower from one of the pattern papers to add to that. Now you could handwrite a message there, or you could stamp whatever you would like in that section. Personally, I think the papers I chose are rather busy, so I'm going to leave my small strips plain. So starting at the front, and this is what I'm calling my front, I have the sentiment from Helen Keller that says, walking with a friend in the dark is better than walking alone in the light. Then my next page, I have the flower combination. I used my colored pencil to do a little bit of grounding under the flower. And I just, again, fussy cut a piece that I adhered to the 1-inch strip. On the next page, again, as you can see on each page, I had blended the perimeters, fussy cut flowers. This time I switched my inks up and I used the VersaFine Clear Pine Cone for the birds and the branches and the nest. Next section, again, continuing in the same manner, a fussy cut flower on the left, another sentiment. If friends were flowers, I'd pick you. The next page, fussy cut elements from the paper. Now, keep that in mind when you're using pattern paper. You know, there's always elements typically that you can cut out and use for embellishments. And something like this is not going to create extra bulk. After I stamped the hare and the mouse, I did add some grounding with that colored pencil. And the last page, again, a fussy cut flower along with the bird and some branches. Now, maybe what you would like to do is keep the very last page solid without a print, where you could handwrite your own message. Remember, you can lay this flat. So you could handwrite it there, or prior to you even adhering it to that panel, you could have your message already written and adhere it. So here it is finished, which I think it would look really sweet on someone's desk to be able to look at this, rotate it around to see the different pictures that you created. A fun little card to make that really is simple. Once you get the first one done, you'll realize how easy this is, and you'll start thinking of different combinations that you can make with the papers that you have. But honestly, folks, this paper from Craft Consortium is absolutely gorgeous paper, perfect weight for this card, and you just have so many awesome patterns to pick from. Look in the shop and see all the different ones Patty has in stock. They're wonderful to work with. Okay, thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.